What are the conditions of the profit-driven ghost cities? This is a large game for power. Have these players removed the human element of money from their privately owned cities?
High-rise apartments stretch into the sky. Traffic lights flash with no traffic in sight. The neon lights are on, but nobody's home. These are China's ghost cities, sprawling, empty spaces, just waiting for one thing: people.
All of them were bizarre. All of them were surreal. There's no other way to describe just a city meant for thousands of people that's just completely empty.
The few people that live here often wonder if they'll ever get neighbours. Samuel Stevenson Yang is a photographer working to document this modern Chinese phenomenon.
I think the mission started because it was just hard for people to believe exactly how much empty property was all over the country. And we had to just go in person to take photos so that we could show people just the sheer scale of the building that was going on.
To bring power, fantasy must remain to some degree unrealized, literally unreal. The reality. Change is slow and gradual. It requires hard work, a bit of luck, a fair amount of self-sacrifice, and a lot of patience. The fantasy. A sudden transformation will bring a total change in one's fortunes, bypassing work, luck, self-sacrifice, and time in one fantastic stroke.
Values of society by building temples. In the Renaissance, they were kind of presumably working for the kind of powers that be, or the Pope or princes. I think in the 19th century and large part of the 20th century, we worked for the public sector and articulated how industrial society could look and should look and how it should cohere. And of course, there was a lot of private commissioners that were part of that, but I think on the whole, cities were shaped by collective forces. And if you look at the current situation, which has been really characterized by maybe 20 or 30 years of market economy, I think that's a drastic change because that public dimension has weakened almost immeasurably, and so therefore we are now very often serving private interests. And so if you ask what can architecture do, we could do workers' housing kind of only 30 years ago, or cheap housing for 40 years ago. Now I cannot do it anymore. I mean, simply because nobody asked me, and nobody would ever ask me in their right minds. And it's a...
The symbol is a shortcut of expression, containing dozens of meanings in one simple phrase or object. For example, the symbol of the Sun King, as explained by Louis XIV, can be read on many layers, but the beauty of it is that its associations required no explanation, spoke immediately to his subjects, distinguished from all other kings, and conjured up a kind of majesty that went far beyond the words themselves. The symbol contains untold power. The visual contains great emotional power. Find and associate yourself with the images and symbols that will communicate this in an immediate way, and you will have untold power.
In 1887, West Dorset District Council selected Duchy of Cornwall land for the expansion of Dorchester, with the Prince of Wales, also known as the Duke of Cornwall, collaborating on a model urban extension. Architect Leon Creer was appointed in 1988 to develop a concept adhering to the traditional Dorset architecture and the principles outlined in a vision of Britain. Poundbury was divided into 4 quarters, each designed by selected architects maintaining overall principles. Construction began in 1993, and the northwest quadrant is expected to be completed by 2027, contributing to a 25% population increase in Dorchester to approximately 5,800 people. So if you're ready, let's go take a look around this experimental urban extension. The date today is the 3rd of December. It is 8 degrees. It's pretty chilly and it's a bit wet, as you've probably seen. But we're going to be having a little look around Poundbury. and see what's what. Now, you may know that Poundbury used to be owned by Prince Charles, who is now King Charles, and I believe that it's been passed down to William now. This is all of his estate. Now, as we walk around this wet day, you're going to see it is quite interesting looking. Saying about the buildings and the way that they look, they're quite unique. They're designed to look quite old-fashioned, and you're going to see as we walk around that some of these doorways and that and the fronts, they do look very nice, especially on this side. Look at that. So we've got the main square up there, but I want to show you some of the properties. So let's go down here. Let's cross over, try not to slip, because this will give you an idea.
The ultimate power is the power to get people to do as you wish. When you can do this without having to force people or hurt them, when they willingly grant you what you desire, then your power is untouchable. The best way to achieve this position is to create a relationship of dependence.
Mixed functions. Poundbury was not just supposed to extend Dorchester, but it had to be an autonomous town with mixed functions like shops, offices, workplaces and houses. Why was that so important? Well, many newly built towns or city extensions are monotonous dormitory suburbs that don't offer anything else but housing. This is the result of the failed modernist idea of separation of functions. They kept housing separate, put shops in a mall and offices in an office park. But this makes these towns boring and prevents a thriving community from forming, as life happens where living, producing, business and entertainment meet. In Poundbury you will see small shops, cafes, offices and restaurants everywhere. And the town is full of at-home workshops where mostly women have created a living for themselves. 2,600 people work in Poundbury, which is really a lot.
I said social housing is useless if you don't have social workshops, so that the people who start their life with small family and they want to be independent, if they find cheap workshop, they will do a job, an independent job.
Number 2, the walkable city. The second design secret was that the town would be walkable and attractive for pedestrians and cyclists. The town is designed in a compact way.
What could the future of cities be if architects who care more about design and people over money had the power to design and plan a scratch city? What is the vision for these cities? How should people live their lives here?
Solutions to address our most fundamental needs, a city will thrive.
What kind of cities do we want? How do we want to interact as people in cities? Because cities aren't buildings, they're people.
Part of the job of urban success means to attract and produce skilled people and to retain skilled talent.
This goes together in a city. Opportunity and solving problems as they arise, innovating.
Detroit is innovating right now, probably kind of like the way it was in the 1890s, when over 100 companies were working furiously to figure out the automobile. That's also like Silicon Valley in the 60s and 70s, Bangalore in the 80s, and Shenzhen, where 90% of the world's drones are manufactured right now.
For 50 years, you're starting to see people rethink what our streets are about and who they're for.
Now cities are spending money getting rid of highways, confirming that more transportation choices and less parking are often the best ways to fight traffic and congestion.
This used to be a motorway, now it's a public space. So you got green space, shade, clean water, natural cooler temperature in the area, and sure enough, traffic got better.
Seoul is turning another highway into a path for people. Paris is going full pedestrian along the Seine. In Singapore, where they just debuted a self-driving taxi, they're also building a city with no cars. Same thing in
Mannheim, Germany.
Which, ironically, is where this guy invented the first car.
The future of our cities is about people. That really does mean focusing on public transportation and providing choices for how people get around.
The number one factor that determines whether someone can escape poverty, you would think it'd be like crime rates or school, is commute time.
When walking, cycling, and public transportation are the fastest ways to move, nobody feels like a second-class citizen for not owning a car.
That's going to be the secret sauce for cities in the 21st century.
Check out all these Metro cards. That last one's from Singapore, where I didn't meet a single person who owns a car.
It's hard to beat the Singaporeans.
And the people of India have always made more out of less. The inexpensive clay fridge that requires no electricity or their hyper-efficient massive homemade meal delivery system could never have been conceived by some well-heeled think tank. Dr. Joachim has lived in the slums for 50 years, built 1 million houses and toilets, been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, and brought his organization, Slum Dwellers International, to 43 different countries.
We don't need you to come and sit on my head and dance. I know how to write my song. It is my dance, my song, I will play it.
He's basically saying, we got this. If you want to help, channel your support through us. For example, here's a self-run recycling operation in Joachim's neighborhood. We all want to be involved in the futures of the places where we live.
You go and see every city in the world. All has been planned by very, very super well-known, renowned architect and philosopher and so on and so forth. You have lost all the sense of hearing from the people.
Unfortunately, a lot of architects have a sort of a pre-designed approach that they force into whatever context and culture they get to.
And not every city can be like Singapore, where 80% of the people live in public housing.
So that means you don't have slums, nor do you leave the city and its residents in the hands of the private rental sector.
Back to Mumbai. We tend to disregard places like Dharavi, where Dr. Joachim lives, but it's a rare example of a neighborhood solving its own housing needs. My friend Matthias
was left to people themselves, and that created the gradual growth of a neighborhood.
Like Tokyo in the 1950s, it's your neighbors planning and building your home in Dharavi.
Up to 90 people can be working on a small site for 4 weeks and produce a house of much better quality than the affordable housing that the government is developing.
And embodying the kind of incremental growth private developers rarely aim for.
The places that are self-built, we often see an incredible amount of care, feeling of ownership, a human scale in terms of what is actually being built.
How do we combine the genius that's really there in the streets, it's solving its own problem? How do we then bring in a little bit of outside technology or better public management in order to upgrade them and to empower their citizens' lives more effectively?
Post-war Tokyo, unlike Mumbai, had major funding and state-of-the-art infrastructure.